Chapter 5. After Harry had completed the task of weeding the flower beds in the back garden, his Aunt Petunia took the time to check that they were finished to her exacting standards. After a few minutes where Harry had stood awkwardly off to one side, trying desperately not to fidget, his aunt had grudgingly commended him on his work and told him to do the front flower beds also. A few hours later, a tired and very filthy black-haired teen made his way inside the door of number 4 Privet Drive. Carefully taking his shoes off and wrapping them in a carrier bag for the mud to harden, Harry headed into his bedroom, grabbing a fresh t-shirt and a pair of trousers, and headed downstairs to wash up. Seeing as his family were home and he was completely covered in mud and grime, Harry knew he would not get away with sneaking into the bathroom for a shower. A quick wash in the downstairs toilet sink would have to suffice. After he had washed and changed his clothes, Harry made his way into the living room. Vernon, Petunia, Marge and Dudley were all sat around the television watching an old film. Harry waited patiently to be noticed, and eventually his uncle turned and addressed him. "Finally finished, have you, boy? Took you long enough." "Yes, Uncle Vernon." "You can make a start on dinner then. There are steaks in the fridge and potatoes by the back door. You remember how we like our steaks, don't you, boy?" "Yes, Uncle Vernon." "See that you do, or there will be trouble. There are 7 steaks. See that they are all cooked correctly. 2 each for Marge and me, 1 for your Aunt Petunia." At this Vernon turned to his wife and muttered something quietly, to which she replied with a light kiss to his chubby cheek. "Very well, pet, but I still think you could use more meat on those bones of yours. Dudley, you're having 2 steaks as usual, aren't you, my lad?" Hearing his name, Dudley turned and acknowledged his uncle. "Actually, Dad, I was thinking I'd just have 1 today. The freak can have the other one." Silence filled the living room. "What have you done to my son, boy? And don't you be telling me any lies either. I won't stand for it. I saw you talking to him earlier. What did you threaten my son with, you hooligan?" Vernon's voice had gotten louder with each word, culminating in a level of noise previously unheard in the small terraced house. Gulping nervously as his uncle angrily tried to heave himself to his feet, Harry could think of nothing to say that would diffuse the situation. Stuttering out a response was soon deemed unnecessary as his cousin once again spoke up. "Dad! Dad!" The voice of Dudley Dursley penetrated the raging mind of his father, and Vernon stared at his son in shock. "He didn't do anything to me, and we weren't talking earlier. I was telling him he'd better do a good job on Mum's roses, or he'd have me to deal with." Soldiering on, Dudley once again used his voice in the ensuing silence. "I just thought I'd have 1 steak, so that Mum might allow me to have double portions of the chocolate fudge cake Aunt Marge left in the fridge for pudding. You know, to celebrate her coming to stay and all that." "Of course you may have 2 pieces of cake, Dudley," his Aunt Marge's voice said, sickeningly sweet. "Right, Petunia?" Sitting stock still and staring at her son, Petunia could do nothing but nod. "Well, I guess that's settled then," Vernon said rather stiffly. "Get cooking, boy, but understand that you won't be eating at the table with us civilized folk." Bowing his head in acquiescence, Harry headed into the kitchen to make dinner for his relatives. For the first time since he had been a resident of number 4, Harry Potter felt accepted. Not by the adults in the house, never by them, but his cousin would have normally been permitted 2 steaks and 2 pieces of cake, as even his Aunt Petunia could not argue against the brashness of Marjorie Dursley. No, Dudley had given up his extra portion to him, the freak, and Harry knew that was as close to a heartfelt apology as he was ever likely to get. With a small smile, Harry began to prepare dinner, even going so far as to make the homemade peppercorn sauce that Dudley was so fond of. Later that night, after being locked in his room by his relatives, Harry was putting the finishing touches on his History of Magic essay. It was not his best work, but it was not his best subject. Maybe he could scrape and exceed expectations if he could get Hermione to check his essay on the train ride to Hogwarts. Just as he was setting down his quill, a gentle tapping caught his attention. "Hedwig!" The beautiful snowy owl was patiently waiting on his window-sill and was bouncing slightly in her excitement. Wrenching open the window, Harry waited for his familiar to hop onto his arm before sitting himself down on the bed. Allowing her master to pet her for a few moments, she preened under his gentle ministrations. With a mild nip on her master's finger, she proceeded to stick her leg out and waited to be relieved of the note. "Is this from Hermione, girl?" Hedwig bobbed her head in confirmation, and after watching her young master remove the letter carefully, so as not to hurt her, she flew onto her perch and stuck her head under her wing to rest. Unfolding the aged parchment, Harry began to read. dear Harry. Of course I will look after Hedwig. She's always welcome. Also, thank you for giving me permission to send some letters with her. Victor normally writes me a few letters in the summer, and it would be nice to be able to send the first one this year. Please understand and accept that I do not blame you for what Dalhav did to me in the Department of Mysteries. I followed you willingly, and I would do so again, even knowing that I would get hurt, because you're my best friend. So please stop fretting over it, and know that I'm getting better every day. Madame Pomfrey said that I'll probably have to take potions for at least the next month, but that I should be back to normal by September 1st. To be honest, I'm not really in pain from the curse anymore. Well, most of the time. If I move too suddenly or try to lift something heavy, it hurts a lot, but otherwise it's a continual dull ache. I'm not going to lie to you, Harry. It's not been easy coming to terms with my injury. I have nightmares, and I'm afraid that you think less of me because I couldn't defend myself. How can I help you if I cannot help myself? I'm sorry to hear that your Aunt Marge is back. I remember the stories that you told us about how she treats you. Try not to lose your temper, though, Harry. Know that I think you're worth 100 of her, and that anything she says is just ignorance. To be honest, she sounds like the Muggle counterpart of Malfoy, and you're able to handle him, so just try and ignore it as best as you can. It's only going to be for a week or so. I know you can do it. So you received a letter from Gringotts too? I'm not surprised, as we both know how much Sirius loved you. You were practically the only family he had. I will try and research magical will readings to see what will happen, but I cannot see it being too different from the Muggle ones. I can't wait to see you, though. I wish it were in better circumstances. I always miss you so much during the holidays. I know I'm repeating myself, but don't blame yourself for Sirius's death. It was Bellatrix who shot the curse, not you. So if you want to blame anyone, blame her. Oh, Harry, I swear, if I could curse her for you, I would, but she's extremely unstable and probably more dangerous because of it. I don't understand why you've never received a statement from Gringotts, though. I mean, I don't even have a vault, but I receive letters 2 or 3 times a year about the state of the economy and the exchange rate from pounds to galleons. I would recommend writing a letter to them and asking. Maybe it's a clerical error. Who knows, but it needs to be sorted. As a vault holder, you should receive information on the interest rates as well as a yearly total. Do you want me to do some research? Let me know when you send Hedwig back to me. Keep your chin up, Harry. You're not alone. Never alone. Lots of love, Hermione. Carefully folding up the letter, Harry placed it on his desk, ready to reply in the morning. Hedwig was sleeping soundly on her perch, and Harry's eyes were tired and sore. With a yawn, he removed his glasses, placing them on the small, wonky bedside table, and lay down on the bed. Barely a minute had passed before the dark-haired teenager was sound asleep. When Harry awoke the following morning, he was relieved to see that the weather was dry, and it looked as though the sun may even make a small appearance from behind the clouds later on in the day. Standing up and stretching his muscles, Harry placed his glasses on his nose and looked confused as he spotted a bowl of cereal, dry, and a glass of water already pushed through the cat flap. Feeling his stomach grumble lightly, Harry picked up the bowl, and, just as he was turning back towards the desk to eat, spotted a note that had been tucked under the bowl, written in his uncle's sharp, slanted script. Boy, we've gone to the coast for a few days with your Aunt Marge and Dudley. Your Aunt Petunia has left a list of chores to complete no later than Sunday afternoon when we expect to return. The house better be pristine. You don't need to worry about Ripper. We're dropping him with a friend of Marge's. There's no way we would trust you to look after anything more than that ruddy pigeon. Smiling, Harry consumed his cereal and jauntily walked to the bathroom to freshen up. He couldn't believe his luck. 3 whole days without the Dursleys breathing down his neck. 3 whole days to have free reign over the house. He might even watch a movie or two, though he'd have to remember to put the VHS tapes back where he found them. After toweling off and dressing in clean clothes, Harry reread the letter that Hermione had sent him the previous night and began to form a reply. Dear Hermione, I'm glad that you're getting better, but I still cannot help but feel responsible. I know, you think that I shouldn't, but it's not something I can change right now. Too many bad things happened there for me to not feel responsible. At the end of the day, if I hadn't gone, no one would have gone, and you wouldn't have been injured, Sirius would be alive, and I wouldn't have this pain in my chest that I just can't shift. I think that you were great in the Department of Mysteries. I mean, we're only 5th years after all, and we held them off for the most part. Imagine what we'll be able to do for this war when we are 7th years. I wish Dumbledore would help me. He practically ignored me all last year for his greater good, and I have to wonder when he's going to give me the training I need, that we need. I'll consider writing to the goblins about my lack of mail. You're probably right. I mean, they have hundreds of vaults to keep an eye on. I'm probably just one of the unlucky ones that slip through the net. If I don't write to them, I'll just ask when I go there for the reading of the will, so there's no need to research anything for me, but thank you for the offer. So my family have all gone to the seaside for a few days. They went back until Sunday. A whole 3 days without them breathing down my neck. It's going to be awesome. You'll be so proud, Hermione. I finished my History of Magic essay already. I'm not sure how good it is. You know how I struggle with the dates and all that. I don't suppose you'd be prepared to check it for me on the train. I would offer to help you check one of your essays, but let's be honest, I would be more likely to lower your grade than raise it. Don't work too hard. Harry Potter. With a nod of his head, Harry folded the parchment up and proceeded to call his familiar over to him. After feeding her a few treats, he tied the note to her leg and sent her on her way back to Hermione. It was an interesting few days for young Mr. Potter. He slept in, ate a leisurely breakfast, and had a shower all before he even started on the long list left to him by his aunt. Having done a lot of these jobs many times before, Harry was a lot quicker than his family gave him credit for. He tidied, washed, polished, cleaned, scrubbed, and vacuumed with ease. Add to that the fact that his uncle and aunts weren't around to nag him for missing a spot or not doing it right. Harry was a happy boy. At midday he ate a light lunch, and after more chores cooked a healthy yet filling dinner for himself each evening. Knowing what he did about his family, Harry believed that they may try and punish him for some make-believe misdemeanour when they returned from their trip. Harry could handle the punishments that his uncle delivered. It was probably one of the reasons that Harry was as unaffected by pain as he was. It was never pleasant, but it was less painful than the Cruciatus curse, and even that was bearable for a small amount of time. The one thing Harry could not stand, however, was the withdrawal of food. Before he had started at Hogwarts, it was just another part of his uncle's punishment regime, and Harry learned to live with it. Now, though, after eating well for 9 months, it was a torture like no other to go without for more than 2 days. It was this frightening thought, and this thought alone, that made Harry raid the cupboards on the Sunday morning, picking out short-dated or just out-of-date non-perishables, and hide them under the loose floorboard in his bedroom. By midday, Harry was happy with his haul, and spent the next 2 hours making his way from room to room, making sure that everything was as it should be. It was almost 3 p.m. when the Dursleys' car pulled up in the driveway. As the front door opened, Harry could hear the happy and excited chatter, and hoped that he'd done well enough for it to remain that way. All was well, or so it seemed, when by dinner time Harry had heard nothing from his relatives. Deeming it safe, Harry made his way downstairs to get some food for himself. He couldn't have them knowing that he had some stored away. Plus, he may need to dip into it throughout the rest of the summer, and he didn't want to deplete it too soon. He didn't think that he would get a chance to restock. "Did you have a nice time?" Harry asked as he walked into the kitchen and made his way to the table. Sitting down at the only available space, Harry sat patiently for his aunt to dish him his rations. "That we did, boy," said his uncle as he cut into one of his pork chops. "That we did. Did you complete the list that your aunt left you?" Alarm bells started ringing in his head. They knew something, and Harry didn't like not knowing what he'd done wrong. Looking around, he noticed that his aunt had not made a move to fill his plate, and was instead looking down at her own, silent and straight-backed. Dudley, as usual, was too busy eating to notice the incoming altercation, and Marge was sat watching him, a smirk on her chubby face. "Yes, Uncle Vernon," Harry said, trying to keep his voice level. "Ah, good. You didn't do anything that you shouldn't have, did you, boy?" "No, Uncle Vernon." Maintaining an innocent air and a questioning gaze, Harry stayed stock still. If he fidgeted, the inaudible war would be lost. "Are you sure, boy?" said his uncle. "If you tell me the truth now, your punishment won't be so bad." "Damn," thought Harry. Thinking back over the previous few days, Harry tried to think of what he'd done. He knew he'd put the VHS tapes back after watching them. My goodness, those carry-on films were truly hilarious. He could understand why his family owned so many and frequently sat down to watch one after dinner. The food could be an issue, but they would normally leave orders on what he could or couldn't eat. As they hadn't, Harry had enjoyed a stable diet, but had stuck for the most part to using the perishables that would not last for when his relatives came home. I don't know what you... "Don't lie to me, you little thief," yelled Vernon, standing up faster than Harry believed possible for the obese man, spittle flying from his lips. Harry sat frozen, his mind registering only one word. He was certainly no thief. He'd never stolen anything. Well, except for the food that was hidden upstairs. Maybe that was what this was about. The anger rolling off his uncle made Harry doubt this somehow. Before Harry could even begin denying the allegation, his uncle had begun once more. "After all that we have done for you, you worthless piece of scum, this is how you return the favour?" His tone was harsh, his voice so loud it was terrifying. Even Dudley had stopped eating and was staring at his father in fear, his fork hanging limply from his meaty hand as it made its way to an open mouth. Vernon continued on, this time dangerously low, and that was when Harry himself became frightened. "I gave you a chance, boy, a chance to tell us the truth. That was the only opportunity I'm willing to give you, and now I'm going to make you pay." Harry gulped and started edging away from the table. His aunt had yet to move and was still staring at her plate, her expression blank. "I'm going to take that money out of your ass, boy. Marjorie, grab him." Harry felt his Aunt Marge's pudgy arms encircle him and drag him towards his now purpling uncle. His cousin Dudley made his way out of the kitchen, his frightened eyes never leaving his father's bulk until he reached the front door. As Harry was brought before his uncle, he saw, out of the corner of his eyes, Dudley's figure as he left through the front door, closing it quietly. Seeing no help forthcoming from his Aunt Petunia, Harry decided the only option left to him was to beg. "Please, Uncle Vernon, I never—" Poor Harry didn't get a chance to finish his sentence as the large fist of his uncle connected with his jaw. He would have fell were it not for the arms restraining him. "I don't like liars and I don't like thieves, boy," Vernon said, this time bringing his fist into his nephew's stomach and making him double over. "I've been too soft on you, obviously, but no more. I will make you regret ever crossing me." Harry lost count as the hits continued to rain down on him. With Aunt Marge detaining him, he couldn't even bring his arms up to protect himself. "Please, Uncle, please," came the fearful cry from the bruised teen. "There will be no mercy," said Vernon with another right hook. The last thing he heard before he lost consciousness was his uncle's laboured breathing and Marjorie Dursley's insane laughter. Meanwhile, outside number 4 Privet Drive, under a borrowed invisibility cloak, was a middle-aged wizard by the name of Mundungus Fletcher. He stood, swaying slightly, next to Petunia's prized rose bushes. Instead of informing the Order, namely one Albus Dumbledore, of the disturbing noises coming from the inside of the house, Mundungus proceeded to count his rather blurry fingers before losing consciousness and falling atop the aforementioned rose bushes. The amount of alcohol currently in his system was incredibly numbing to the feel of the thorns pushing into his side as he lay there, snoring and drooling like the drunkard he truly was. As dawn broke, Mundungus awoke to the feel of the sun on his face. Standing abruptly, he looked down at his watch and was pleased to note that there were still 15 minutes until another Order member came to relieve him. Tidying himself as best as he could, and removing the stench of fire whiskey with a well-practised swish of his wand, he stood awaiting the next guard, all memory of the previous night's commotion forgotten. There would be no rescue party for the hero of the wizarding world, and the knowledge of his punishment would remain unknown by all those claiming to protect him.